Senator Hislop.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Coming so low down in the batting lineup late in the evening. I don't expect to take 40 minutes. I certainly would not be like Senator Paul Richards to say he's going to have a short intervention and almost made his 40 minutes. But, Mr. President, I want to thank you for the opportunity to join this debate today, Finance Supplementary Appropriation, Financial Year 2024, Bill 2024. And I just want to have a few interventions with regards to the discussion today. I want to just correct or just touch on a couple of things that were raised by our colleagues opposite. And I understand their dilemma, that my colleagues, especially in the opposition bench, are literally in a fight for their lives. Because depending on what happens come this weekend, there may be some significant change taking place on the opposition bench. But then one thing I could say, Mr. President, I heard Senator Gosine attempt to bowl a ball. But one thing I could say about our leader and Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago is that his academic qualifications are true and genuine. His doctorate is true, and all other academic qualifications that he would have received are genuine and authentic. I don't know what is Senator Leiter's challenge with Tobago, Mr. President. I want to find out. He keeps referring to the 1.2 billion or the how much billion plus airport project that's taking place in Tobago as a wing. I don't know when last Senator Leiter visited Tobago and to see to see the magnitude of the work that is taking place in Crown Point. That was part of a holistic build out for Tobago's economy. And we could talk about, we want to touch on the two hotels that are making sense and all of that kind of thing. But the reality, Mr. President, is that when that airport project was conceptualized, it was conceptualized as part of an entire tourism diversification project for Tobago. And now we're in a situation where your contemporaries in Tobago, after they made all the noise about that project, you have a visiting Prime Minister to Trinidad and Tobago literally laughing us because they've got the project, seeing the benefits of the project in a Caribbean island, and they're literally laughing at us and saying, well, this project should have been Tobago, but we have it now, and they are benefiting from it. And it's very unfortunate that you have now another project to seek to diversify the economy. Mr. President, could you seek your protection?
Senators.
Thank you, Mr. President. And there's another project that seeks to diversify not only Tobago's or to enhance Tobago's economy, but to assist in the diversification of the national economy. And you have, again, voices rising to the fore about the Marriott project that can add value to Trinidad and Tobago, Mr. President. There's no need for us to, Senator Gosine kept reiterating going down the road of Petrotrin. I think the Minister of Energy dealt with that with relation to it being a U.S., a foreign currency earner. So there's no need for us to go down that road. But Mr. President, I just want to touch quickly on Head 15, which is the 50 million that was allocated to the Tobago House of Assembly and is classified as an extraordinary expenditure. And it is to meet the cleanup and remediation costs associated with the oil spill which occurred on the 7th of February. You know, I hear the concerns that the 50 million is not enough. And that may be true to one extent. And I want to take it from this standpoint that we felt the impact of the oil spill in Tobago. We understood what it did to that part of the island. And I had my own personal experience going down to the cleanup site with a group of other colleagues. We assisted in cleanup on that day, and we saw the devastation. We even assisted in refreshments, just donating refreshments to the volunteers and the workers on the site. And it was truly heartrending to see a place that you would go to just hang out. You can't even stand up in the wind because of the stench of the hydrocarbon. And from day one, Mr. President, the central government made a commitment to the people of Tobago. Because the questions were asked, who's going to pay for this? And as the Prime Minister gave a commitment, he said that this is not something the Tobago House of Assembly could have budgeted for. It is not even something that central government could have budgeted for. But the reality is, we had to find the money. Because you couldn't leave the island or that part of the island in the state that it was in. And even Mr. President, Senator Leiter made this comment that the oil spill decimated the tourism economy in Tobago, and that was far from the truth, because the area of the island that was impacted by that was not one of those areas that was widely visited. Yeah, it's not one of those places that are wild, but there are still persons, Mr. President, who were impacted by it. You had your fisher folk, you had even your kiteboarders who would go on that side of the island because it's the windward side. The Magdalena Hotel was affected significantly by it as well. But not when you talk about the tourism sector, the beaches that you're accustomed visiting when you come to Tobago were not affected by it. And but what was significant, Mr. President, is that the central government didn't just say, well, this is happening in Tobago, we're going to leave it. Let Tobago see about it. From day one, there was significant involvement by all agencies and ministries of the government of Trinidad and Tobago. And that's one of the things sometimes I think we fail to make the connection on, that even though this thing happened in Tobago, it happened to Trinidad and Tobago. And the government of Trinidad and Tobago, along with the Tobago House of Assembly, still has responsibility and worked. I think Senator Remy spoke to the level of collaboration that took place between central government and the Tobago House of Assembly with regards to this cleanup. And we saw Ministry of Energy sending out press releases from the day right after. The Minister of Works came to Tobago with the Minister of Energy. And then by a couple of days after, you saw the Prime Minister himself make a visit, do a tour, held a press conference. And it is in that press conference he gave the commitment that the assistance will be given, or the payments or the cost that is incurred for the cleanup, that the central government, the government of Trinidad and Tobago, has to step up to the plate and make sure that was done. And if I quote him, he says, some not insignificant cost is being incurred just to respond to something that we didn't cater for. And he gave the commitment at that press conference that we will we're going to take care of the cost. I know this is not, you can't compare in terms of size, but when you look at what transpired in Louisiana with the oil spill in Louisiana, the BP Deep Horizon, there's a Washington and Washington Post, Reuters, all of them shared that it was 6 years after BP was still paying out compensation for that oil spill. And so 50 million being allocated to assist. And according to the Minister of Finance in the adoption of the Standing Finance Committee report, and if I quote from the Hansard, Mr. President, he said that the chief administrator submitted a letter dated April 17, providing some explanation that formed the basis for the recommendation that is based on actual invoices being processed for the months of February and March, and a small contingency for the future. And so the figure of 50 million was not just pulled out of a hat by the Minister of Finance, and he made that very clear in the Standing Finance Committee. It is not he that made that decision. It was an interrogation of documents that were sent, and the technocrats at the ministry, along with the technocrats at the Tobago House of Assembly, came to this $50 million based on invoices. And to me, Mr. President, that makes sense to me. If you have invoices for 40 million, I give you you get the allocation of 40 million, and there is a contingency because there are things that keep, because this is ongoing work. There's actually work still taking place. And I think members of the public also forget that when it comes to the cost that is incurred by the oil spill, if you want to disaggregate it or you want to separate it, the central government, and you see, I don't want that situation where we separate in the cost because it was a national incident. But if you want to look at it from that standpoint, the Tobago House of Assembly was responsible for the onshore cleanup or the shoreline cleanup, shoreline and on land. And that is the responsibility the THA had. And the Ministry of Energy had the responsibility to treat with the vessel itself. But when you look at the cost, I'm sure when the final costs are tallied with regards to the oil spill, Mr. President, that the central government's portion of the bill will be significantly higher. Because I see the work still going on. I see a vessel parked up in the port of Scarborough just sitting there, waiting to receive the tankers that come from the spill site, to put the oil in that vessel for that vessel to then move out of Tobago. Somebody's paying for that vessel to just be parked up there waiting for the oil. Somebody's paying for it. And I'm almost sure that it is the Ministry of Energy that will be accepting that liability. And so when we haggle over whether it is THA money or central government money, it is the money of the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. It is the taxpayers' dollars that are being spent to revitalize a place that we love, an area that we love. And I empathize with the fisher folk, Mr. President. I've seen it firsthand. Not a fisherman. Never claimed to be a fisherman. Come from a village that I don't see. Not a fisherman. But I empathize with the fishermen, and I understand the challenge that they face with their livelihood being affected. But I'm positive that I'm part of an organization, part of a government, part of an institution that will make the necessary provisions. All of the provisions, Mr. President, cannot be made at one time. But I'm almost certain that the provisions will be made in the time to come. And as I wrap up, Mr. President, I'm looking at the breakdown of the 50 million. And you see, we have this, we have this challenge that we have one sector stating that they didn't get any money from the 50 million allocation. But when you look at the breakdown of that 50 million, Mr. President, this redounds to small businesses in Tobago. This redounds to companies that are run by families, companies that are small, micro, and medium companies are going to benefit from this. Because when we talk about lease and rental of infrastructure, that's tents and your portable toilet facilities that were provided for the cleanup facility, for the cleanup process by small companies in Tobago. You're talking about materials and supplies, that's hardwares that organizations went to these hardwares, took equipment to work on the cleanup site. That ran up a bill for the THA, hardwares. You have the marine support services and security. I sat with the owner of a security company, and he was one of the persons who provided a service for the cleanup. And I'm sure he is happy to be able to finally have sight that he's going to be paid for the service that he provided for the cleanup. You have what? It's 33.8 million, the cost of cleanup and remediation. $184,000 for catering. This again, 327 for catering. This again, small caterers who would have put out in order to supply food, the meals for volunteers and for the workers. And they can now see some light that their bills can now be covered. And so when we look at the 50 million and we say that the 50 million, we behave as if it is nothing. Tell the person who has an invoice in for $40,000 or for $50,000. Tell a security company who has an invoice in for maybe $80,000. It means something to them. You see, and sometimes we always look at the macro picture and not understand that it means something to the person who fulfilled the service. And it means that they're getting paid, they can pay their bills, they can pay the loans in the bank, and so their business can continue. And so we can't just sweep it under the carpet that 50 million is not enough, and we make it noise. That, to me, doesn't make sense. The work continues, Mr. President, and continues to restore Tobago, or to restore that part of Tobago to what we know it to be. And as I said in closing, in true Tobago harvest style, Mr. President, there was a coming together of everybody in Tobago. It may not have affected every single individual. They were not in the area of the oil, but they understood that if this part of Tobago is affected, I'm affected. And so they came together, we assisted in the cleanup, we helped where we could. And I would say, from the standpoint of a Tobagonian, from the standpoint of a businessman who will benefit from the 50 million, a caterer, a hardware store, a security company, I am sure that they are grateful that the allocation is made towards that. We look forward to, in the future, more allocations being made with regards to that. And the Minister of Energy has been doing a fantastic job in sourcing international assistance. Because the reality, Mr. President, is that we know our challenges with revenue. We know our challenges as a country. And so when we're faced with a situation where we have to find maybe 40 million US, 30 million US, or how much ever it will eventually cost, we are in a position that there is an entity that can assist in covering our financial costs as it relates to the oil spill. Mr. President, I thank you.